Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our public info session on our 2025 to 2029 five-year service plan. I was just getting some technical difficulties sorted out, but we appreciate your patience. We are going to get started. So I am Megan Waters. I am with the Community Engagement Department at UTA. I'm excited to introduce to you Eric Callison from our team as well. He manages our service planning team. So Eric, if you want to go to the next slide, I can just do a brief intro and orientation. This is our plan, our agenda for the evening. So you'll hear about the purpose of the five-year service plan. If you've been following along, we do have some updates and revisions to share with you, namely a phased plan for 2025 through 2029, as well as share some of our feedback opportunities that are ongoing throughout this month and until October 6th. So that is our plan for the evening. We will have an opportunity for you to ask questions throughout the meeting by utilizing the chat feature. If you want to go to the next slide, Eric, I do have just a little graphic showing you. You're welcome to click on these icons if you do. We'll likely utilize mostly the chat and the Q&A. If you are unable to put your questions in the chat or the Q&A, please feel free to raise your hand by using the raise your hand feature, and we'll unmute you. So you may ask and verbalize your question. And then if you do need closed captioning, you can turn that on using that little CC button in the bottom of your screen. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to let Eric talk about the purpose of the five-year service plan. This is his expertise. So Eric, why don't you take it away?
All right, thank you, Megan. I'm Eric Callison, Manager of Service Planning at UTA, and we'll go right into the presentation. Some of you have, if you've attended the last info session or if you've looked at this online, you'll probably have seen this slide and a couple of others, but we'll just go through them pretty quickly just so that everyone is on the same page. There's a lot going into this five-year service plan. Some of the reasons why we're doing it is to improve employee working conditions. A lot of this is by running service all day on a route instead of just during rush hour. That reduces split shifts and provides more consistent work for our bus operators, as well as better service for the riders. We also have a number of projects coming down the pipeline through the long-range transit plan and other plans that we're preparing for either in this plan or in future five-year service plans. We do receive a lot of feedback from our community. We're very grateful for that feedback, and we try to respond to that as much as we can. We're not able to do everything that everybody wants all the time, unfortunately, but we try to do as much as we can. The five-year service plan is one of the means by which we deliver that to our community. We do want to make sure that we're making the best use of the resources that we have. So we try to optimize the system within our current resources. And then we are still in a phase since COVID where we're trying to restore some of the service that was there previously. We'll be in that phase for another couple of years, as you'll see in this plan. And I can see the chat pop up, but I can't see the actual words. So Megan, just feel free to stop me at any point with questions.
Okay, sounds good.
Just where we're at in the timeline. Right now we're in this June through September 2024. We have the public engagement that we're doing right now. We do plan to present the final plan to the Board of Trustees and our local advisory council starting in October. The plan will be adopted in December 2024, and we'll move immediately into the process for April 2025 change day. Will be the first time that you see new service on the road. We are in the process of developing the revised plan. We had the original plan and we've taken feedback, we've consulted internally, and we've continued our analysis as service planners. We are always analyzing our system to try to optimize it and make the best system that we can have. So we're in the revised plan, which does, as Megan mentioned just a minute ago, includes a phase plan for each year between 2025 and 2029. As well as a list of future projects that we will not be able to get to in the next 5 years, but are still very much on the table for us. Just a couple of brief examples. We will go through this in more detail as we go through the individual changes. But one example of rider and stakeholder feedback, we did ask people to prioritize which improvements they'd like to see first. So we have routes 126, 219, 417, and 823 were some of the highest that people said we want to see this as soon as possible. So we moved some of those to 2025 in the plan. We also added Route 54, was not previously in the plan, to go back to 15-minute service, but we've heard a lot of feedback from our community about that route in particular. Route 612 will continue to South Ogden on a modified route, which we'll cover in a minute. That was another thing that a lot of people pointed out. Here's just another addition to this, a number of other routes that are that you'll see changes between the original draft plan and this plan, I guess is the succinct way to put it. We will go over each of these changes individually, so I won't spend too long on this particular slide. But the themes that we heard from folks include increased frequency, east-west connections, additional spanner service, weekend service, generally just more service. That is one of the most common things that we hear from our community, is that they just want more transit service. We definitely appreciate that. We always take that feedback to our legislature, to our elected officials, to our leadership at UTA, to say this is what the folks are asking for. It's almost always more. We did get specific geographic feedback about specific areas in our community, as well as key destinations that folks want us to connect to. This is just an example of internal feedback. Looking at the proposed Route 628, this dotted line is the draft proposal from the original draft, but we've made a number of modifications to that, either because we decided that it was easier to operate on a different street, or we realized that there was an opportunity to expand our coverage just slightly more in this area. We also did open houses with each of our operating service units. So we talked to our bus and train operators and all of our frontline employees about what they thought about the plan, what feedback they had, things that they may have heard while they're operating in the system. Because we can't be everywhere all at once as planners, but we do rely on that feedback from our employees as well. And then there's a few other things that are in the plan just because we realized that there was an opportunity to do so. So we'll talk about Route 4 extending further south and some modifications in the area of Murray, Holiday, and Cottonwood Heights. And then we're looking at ongoing analysis of our innovative mobility zones. We did propose several additional zones for on-demand type service in the draft plan. And we are still going to be analyzing over the next couple of years what the best way to deliver that is, whether it's UTA on demand as provided by our third-party provider VIA, or whether that's a partnership with Uber and Lyft, or whether there's a different method to deliver that on-demand service that will be the most cost-effective and the best customer service. On each of these slides, you'll see hours, miles, shifts, and pullouts. That just refers to how many hours it will take to operate the service each year, how many miles. How many shifts is how many people will be out driving, and how many pullouts is how many vehicles. I won't refer to that on each slide, but it does give you an idea of the scale of the changes. Some of the changes are quite small, some of them are quite large. And then anything that's shown in the following slides in red, except for this just very next one, but in all of the route descriptions, anything shown in red indicates a revision between the original draft and this current final draft. This again is just a view of the whole 5-year service plan. You can see that there's a lot of changes coming, especially in 2026 and 2027, and then a couple of large changes in 2028. Focus the first couple of years mainly on service restoration and a little bit of addition. And then we have several major lines opening in 2027 to 2028. I won't, again, spend a lot of time on this. This is just kind of introductory material. You can peruse this at your leisure afterwards. It is being recorded, so you can take a little bit more time to study these slides if you'd like. But I'd like to get to just the main meat of the changes at this point. Go ahead,
Eric,
Megan.
really quick before you do that, I have a couple questions already, and I'm going to just stick with the less specific ones, more like overarching contextual questions, because I think it will help just for framing. So we do have a question asking about which of the changes will be prioritized for April specifically versus August or December. So can you talk about kind of how we're structuring change days?
Yes, that's a very good question. So up to this point, we have typically had our major change days in August, except for ski, which goes on in December and comes off in April. But starting in 2025, we're going to move to our major change day being April. And that's partly so that we can help expand our system. We have to hire lots of people for ski service. And then in April, we typically have to find other things for them to do. But with this current 5-year service plan, we're planning on expanding each April. And so the folks that we hired for ski, they can just start on the new stuff, and then we'll hire again to expand for ski and then expand into the next April. So all of these changes that you're going to see are planned for April of the year that they're in. So we'll go over that specifically. And we don't plan on having a lot of major changes in August, and the only real major change in December would be the start of ski service.
Perfect, thank you. And then just another question from our Q&A. So regarding our innovative mobility zones, this comment is kind of pointing out some differences that they're seeing. So the first draft of the plan and map had the zones numbered and with precise boundaries, but in the second draft, there seemed to be references to these zones by city names and not numbers. Will the original level of detail be back in the final plan? I think that is probably a little bit related to, we did switch platforms for showing and engaging with the public on the map. We wanted everything in one place. So there were some subtle differences in how the information is presented just based on the tool we were using. But Eric, would you like to elaborate on any of those kind of the sentiment around numbers or precise boundaries?
Yeah, so two things. One is that we've been working with our third-party provider VIA to analyze the performance of the zones, and we know that some of the zones that we have out there right now are too big. We didn't know that at the time when this whole type of service was brand new, but especially the South Salt Lake County zone is too big to operate efficiently and should probably be split into a couple of smaller zones. And so we were asked to back off on the level of detail a little bit, so that we could potentially split some of those zones up into smaller zones as we get closer to the implementation. We do plan on giving them numbers so that we can track them that way, and you can look at them that way in the open data portal. And we do plan on still providing service in all of those same areas that were outlined in the draft plan, but we've been asked to back off a little bit on the detail. And then the other thing is just what I mentioned a minute ago is we've also been asked to explore other methods of delivery besides what we know as UTA on demand. It could be an Uber and Lyft partnership. It could be a voucher program. It could be a number of different things, especially in places that are more rural, where there's not as much, just as much population density. We've been asked to look at some alternative methods of service delivery. Each of these will still go through the change day process, and we'll have public hearings before any service starts in these on-demand zones. And so we'll offer more detail at that time, or as much as we can offer by the time of the final plan, we'll share with you. But we are backing up on those just a little bit from the draft plan to hopefully be a little bit more precise in the future about exactly where those zones are and how they'll be operated.
Thanks, Eric. Everyone, keep your questions coming. We're going to save the specifics for the end so we can dive into the content and get through that, and then we'll get to the more specific questions.
All right. So I'm just going to go through and I will answer any questions that Megan brings up, and then we'll make sure to get to all of them by the end. So we'll start with April 2025, and we'll look at these in the geographic areas. We have our northern service area, which is Weber, Davis, Box Elder counties. A couple of changes here, talking about the Layton Hills Mall. Right now, Route 470 does not go to Layton Hills Mall. We've proposed to change the route through there, as well as extend Route 627 to the Fruiton Heights Park and Ride, excuse me, Fruit Heights Park and Ride. And then Route 626 and 640 will exchange routing through here just to make it a little bit more efficient, a little bit faster to deploy this service for 2025. The big change here is Route 628. Currently, Route 628 is known as the Midtown Trolley. It is a free fare trolley route that is partially subsidized by the city of Layton. We have met with the city, and we're delighted to announce that the ridership on this route is good enough to incorporate into our regular system. And probably in the configuration that we have here, too much for the trolley buses and needs a full-size regular bus. We've met with the city. They're supportive of us incorporating that into our system. It would no longer be a free route, but it would cover some additional areas on the west side of I-15 in Layton, as well as cover New Ames and Weber State University Davis campus up here. So that's the big change here. Is Route 628 is quite different from what it is today, but a number of just minor adjustments on these other routes to make the system flow a little better through here. Route 417 was in the draft plan. That's one of the routes that we're moving into moving into 2025, because this was identified as a priority for our community to implement as soon as possible. This route will travel from Power Station on the Green Line north on Redwood Road to Woods Cross and North Salt Lake, and it will end at the Woods Cross Front Runner Station. We also have to make it a minor adjustment to the north end of line on Route 217 that will end at Power Station instead of the DSBVI on 1950 West. In Salt Lake County, this is the same as in the draft plan. We propose to increase the level of service on routes 39, 201, and 218 to the level of service they were before COVID. And this has also been identified as a significant priority by our community, especially Route 39. We've received a lot of requests to increase the level of service on that route, so we're excited to be able to do that. In the south part of the county, we have new routes 126 and 219. Route 126 will travel from Daybreak Parkway Station through downtown Harriman to the Slick Harriman campus, as well as the Real Salt Lake Academy, then to these commercial areas here on 134th, to the LDS Riverton office building, over to Draper Frontrunner Station, and also to Draper Town Center Track Station. Route 219 will start at South Jordan, Sandy Civic Center Station, South Jordan Station, Riverfront Parkway, down Redwood Road to 144th and end near the Bluffdale City Hall at 144th South and 22nd West. Eventually, Route 219 will curve back around to serve the Point Frontrunner Station when that opens, but in order to open this line in 2015, that station doesn't exist yet, so we're implementing a shorter version of this route. South Jordan is getting a new track station as well on the red line. That's South Jordan Downtown Station, as shown right here in between South Jordan Parkway and Daybreak Parkway Station. In Utah County in April 2025, we have Route 871, which currently travels between Lehigh Station and Draper Town Center Station off of 123rd South. We propose to extend that further north to Sandy Civic Center Track Station along State Street, which is covered by UTA On Demand, but we don't currently have fixed route bus service on this section of State Street. We also have the new Route 823 in Springville and Spanish Fork that will travel from Provo Station to commercial areas in Springville and Spanish Fork that are not served by the current routes 821 and 822. Route 821 and 822 will not be changing as part of this proposal. We're just adding Route 823 on top. And also, this is a zone that has a number because we are fairly confident that this will be UTA On Demand in West Provo, also implementing in April 2025. This will be a new on-demand zone that serves Provo and Orem Frontrunner stations, the Provo Airport, and basically most of Provo on the west side, west of I-15, and a few residential areas on the east side of I-15 as well. That's April 2025. April 2026, we have a number of other changes. This is when we're planning to do the big changes in the local service in Ogden City. We have the new Route 610, which will travel in a loop around the city of Ogden that does replace parts of Route 612 and 625. We propose to extend Route 612 back to South Ogden, but via Washington Boulevard, and the portion that serves Washington Terrace will be covered by the new Route 610. We have Route 645. We propose to extend all the way to Roy Station and increase the level of service to 30-minute service. That does replace a part of the current Route 640. And then we propose to extend Route 604 across the city and end at the D Event Center, and Route 455 shortened to the D Event Center. In Brigham City, we propose to increase the level of service on Route 630 from 60 minutes to 30 minutes and implement a new on-demand area or new innovative mobility zone in this area to replace Route F638. In Salt Lake County, 2026 is when we propose to increase the level of service on routes 205 and 54 from 30 minutes to 15 minutes. Again, this is something that we have heard from the community very frequently about improving the level of service on these routes. On 200 South, we propose to increase the level of service, replace Route 220 with a new Route 2B that would offset with Route 2A or just Rev 2 to create 6 to 9 minute frequency on weekdays on this corridor. We're still seeing people being turned away, extremely high loads on the buses on 200 South. So we just need to add more capacity on that corridor. This is a new change. This is new to the final draft. Route 4 currently ends at this park and ride at 3900 South in Wasatch. We propose to extend further south to the 6200 South park and ride and extend Route 72 to that park and ride to connect in. This is a connection point for our ski service, and that would provide new connections from different parts of the valley to there. Route 4 does allow us to extend our paratransit coverage further south in this area, meaning that Route 223 can be rerouted. The section on Holiday Boulevard is not very busy, does not get a lot of ridership at this point. We feel it would be more productive to extend Route 223 further west into Murray Central Station via Murray Holiday Road, 5600, 5300 South. That will allow us to run Route 45 all the way up and down 4500 South, which is also something that we've heard from many folks would be an improvement in their area to provide a little bit more coverage on this corridor instead of skipping it in favor of Murray Holiday. The S line will extend to Highland Drive. That is a smaller change in magnitude than a lot of these, but it does require a couple more people and an additional pullout on the streetcar. In Utah County in 2026, we propose to open Route 860, which will travel from Eagle Mountain and Saratoga Springs into the American Fork Frontrunner Station. Currently, we only run 4 trips a day each way to those communities, and this would be replaced with all-day 30-minute service on Route 860, as well as Saturday service. This is also a significant increase to our paratransit service area. We currently don't provide paratransit service in Eagle Mountain and Saratoga Springs, but with the implementation of this route, we would begin to do that. Route 850 would be rerouted to serve the Valley Grove development in Pleasant Grove, which means Route 862 would also be rerouted to serve historic downtown Pleasant Grove. And Route 846 is a new route which will connect into Vineyard Station and cover the parts of Orem, especially East Orem, that are currently covered by Route 862. We're also not being very specific with it, but we do know that we want to run additional innovative mobility or on-demand service in the area of Lehigh and Saratoga Springs, as well as other areas in northern Utah County that you'll be able to see on other slides. In 2027, we are proposing to make some of the changes that will increase connectivity at Roy Station. This includes extending Route 626 to Roy and shortening Route 604 to Roy. We've proposed to reroute portions of Route 604 as well to cover what's currently covered by the flex route F620, and that would replace that flex route. Route 613 would be rerouted to serve BDO. We currently also serve BDO with a flex route. We would like to replace that with a full-size bus. Route 613 will go from 60-minute service to 30-minute service, and Route 613 will tie into the Pleasant View Station along with Route 612 and 630. We currently don't run any service to Pleasant View Station. We'd like to still leverage that location as a park and ride and a transfer point, even though we're not currently running any trains there. Salt Lake County in April 2027, we propose to begin service on the MVX line, which will be Route 50X. That will travel from Murray Central Station along these corridors to the new transit center that will open at Slick and into West Valley Central Station. That will be 15-minute service, and it will have improved station amenities. Some of those are already under construction, and especially if you go to Murray Central Station right now, you can see where it's torn up for construction for MVX. So that's already underway. There are a number of local route adjustments in that area as well, just to help the system flow. And then Route 227 will be increased to 30-minute service and extended along 90th South to historic Sandy Station. Currently, that's covered by Route F590, and the 227 would replace that flex route. On the northwest side of Salt Lake County, especially in the industrial areas, we also propose to make a number of changes. That's because currently the routes that we run in this area are not very linear, and Route 513 and 551 only run a few times a day. We propose to replace those with all-day service on an extended Route 17, then the new routes 26, 31, and then the 203 would serve on 300 West, and the 208 would cover the portion of 900 West that's currently covered by Route 509. We also propose to add a new transit center in Magna so that Route 35 can travel both directions on Main Street instead of in a loop. And Route 31 would tie in to the Magna Transit Center as well. Now, just to point out, this is an increase of 47 shifts and 21 pullouts. So that's a significant increase in service. Hogle Zoo is an increase in 0 shifts and 0 pullouts. So that's a relatively minor change in terms of the amount of resources that it takes to implement. But it is something that's been identified by our community as a significant change. We would extend Route 223 to a new roundabout that will be at the intersection of Sunnyside and Crestview. Currently, there's not a way to physically turn the bus around there. The roundabout will allow us to do that, and that will allow us to stop directly in front of the zoo. And then Route 17 will be rerouted to cover what we're not covering with Route 223. And yes, this slide and the previous slide referenced that Route 17 would go from 60-minute service to 30. In Utah County, we have the Route 833 currently runs between Provo Station and the Provo Airport every 60 minutes and on a limited span of service. We propose to expand both the area of coverage of this route to cover much more of West Provo, as well as increase the service, excuse me, to every 30 minutes. And then that would take over also the East Bay portion of UVX, and UVX would no longer serve that. In 2028, we propose to open the Davis-Salt Lake Community Connector between Farmington and Salt Lake City. This route will replace the southern half of Route 470, and it will serve also destinations in downtown Salt Lake, the U of U, and Research Park, which are currently served by Route 455. The Route 417 that we talked about opening in 2025, we propose to extend further north into Bountiful and Centerville, and the new Route 400 take over Orchard Drive and the portion of Route 455 in southern Davis County. Route 470X will also replace the Farmington trolley, which travels today between Farmington Station, Lagoon, and downtown Farmington. This does require some additional pedestrian infrastructure in the neighborhood of Lagoon. We've talked to the city about that, and they broadly support that, but there is a little bit more detail that needs to go in there. But that would provide 15-minute service between Farmington Station and Lagoon, as well as Sunday service and additional hours in the morning and evening that are not covered today by the Lagoon trolley, Route 667. On the north half of the 470 and between Farmington and Ogden, we propose to replace that with 15-minute service on the new Route 600. And then the portion of 455 between Weber State University and Farmington Station would be replaced by a new Route 609. We also have the 5600 West line that has been in the works for a number of years. We propose to open that between the red line at 5600 West and Salt Lake International Airport. That eventually this route will extend into downtown Salt Lake, but in this 5-year plan, we're proposing to open this portion of it. This is the area that will provide new coverage and new connections to the west side of Salt Lake County. This will be a 15-minute service, and it will provide limited stops along this 5600 West corridor, especially from connection points with other east-west routes, such as on 47th, 54th, 62nd, 78th South on the west side of Salt Lake County. This does replace, we have a flex route on a portion of 5600 West right now, so this route would also replace that F556. In Sandy and South Jordan, we have some pretty large increases in service in 2028 as well, with the routes 200 and 217 extending down to Sandy Civic Center Station and South Jordan Station. Currently, Route 200 only goes as far south as 5300 South, and 217 goes down to 8000 South. We propose to extend both of these down to 100th or 104th South in this neighborhood. Route 126 and 219 that will be introduced in the first place in 2015, we propose to increase the level of service on those routes from 60 minutes to 30 minutes, and also extend Route 219 into the Point Station as soon as that station opens. We also propose to increase the level of service on Route 871 from its current 60-minute service to 30-minute service, and then the routing in the vicinity of Thanksgiving Park will be streamlined, and on-demand service of some kind will cover that portion of the 871 in Lehigh. And finally, in 2029, we have a couple of additional changes. We're kind of phasing down for 2029 at this point. We assume in the next couple of years, because we do.
Hey, Eric. Sorry to interrupt you.
Please.
We do have a couple of questions that are specific to the 556, that might just be topical, to clarify.
Yes.
So one question here, probably the simpler question, is there a reason for continuing the limited stops from the F556?
The Route 256 will not cover every stop that the 556 currently covers. There is some overlap with Route 47. And also the Route 54 and 62 will cross through there where the 556 serves today. If there's a specific stop you have questions about, I'm happy to take feedback on that tonight as well. Because that, we need to look and see if there's anything else that we need to include.
Yeah, so they just said that the current F route doesn't serve very many stops, so it seems hard to use, and it would have been nice to add more stops on the 256, since currently the gaps are pretty big for a regular flex route.
Okay. Again, if there's a particular location, I'm happy to look into it. Some portions of 5600 West don't have a lot of crossings, so there may be some long distances in between there. For safety reasons, we generally only put new stops where there is either a signal or a crossing. If there's a specific location that we're interested in looking at, if you can put it in the chat, and we'll take that feedback from this meeting.
Okay, that's great. Okay, and then just one other, so I guess it's two-part probably. And you did address sort of the phasing of the end of line for the 256. So for this part ending at the airport, so this this participant was just asking about going to Central Station and how that would be helpful for them. And then questions on the timing. So their perception is that the timing has slipped to 2028, and they're asking about implications for that timing and in coordination with the Mountain View Corridor construction. So I don't know, Eric, if that's something you can answer, or if we can get back to them with some more information.
So yeah, a little bit of background. In order for UDOT to finish the Mountain View Corridor up to I-80, there does need to be some form of transit on 5600 West per an environmental agreement that was signed several years ago. And so we're working with UDOT on exactly what the timeline for that implementation is. It sounds like, based on the most recent information that I've heard from them, we don't need to implement the entire line all the way to Salt Lake Central in order for UDOT to begin working on the final portion of Mountain View Corridor. So this is sort of a stepping stone for us, and hopefully allowing them to get that project done more quickly than if we waited for the entire line. Recognize that is an important connection to Salt Lake Central Station. At this point, we're prioritizing the part of the line that's basically new coverage, especially in this sort of northern half of the line. We don't have a connection on 5600 West in any way right now, and so that would be the first part of the line that we'd want to implement.
Thanks, Eric.
Okay. And everybody else, we will get back to your questions, but I just have a couple more things to share. In 2029, we do propose to do some rerouting in the area of Union Park, Fort Union. We've recognized the need for a transit center in that area for some time now. We have an opportunity with a park and ride lot that we currently have on Winchester that's owned by UDOT to create a new transit center there and make some changes to the network. Proposed to extend Route 209 further south down to 78th and tie into Midvale Center Station. This is a change from the draft plan, which just had an ending at the transit center. We propose to extend that further south to create the connection between the Fort Union, Union Park area and the rest of the 209 corridor. We know that that's something that's been asked for quite a bit as well. We've combined Route 62 and 72 into one route that goes all the way across and connects into the 6200 South Park and Ride. And Route 213 will cover the 7200 South portion that's currently covered by Route 72. And then last but not least, we have Route F264, which is a new flex route that would start from 5600 West and go west to residential areas along 6400 West in West Jordan, as well as serve additional commercial and light industrial areas just west of 5600 West station on the red line, and it would tie into that station on the other end. Then we do have the innovative mobility zones we've identified. These are the same zones that were in the draft plan. But as I mentioned previously, we've been asked to back off a little bit on the detail, do a little bit more analysis on these zones before we provide a specific implementation plan for them. So that's North Weber and Brigham City in 2026, extending the Salt Lake City West Side Zone to Central Point Station in 2026. Lehigh, which is the zone that we saw on the Northern Utah County map, also in 2026 in conjunction with the bus changes in Northern Utah County. Alpine and Highland, which is the zone that's pictured here in 2027. Northwest Utah County, it refers to Eagle Mountain and the southern half of Saratoga Springs in 2028. And then West Jordan, Midvale, Cottonwood Heights is basically extending the current South Salt Lake County zone further north. But as I previously mentioned, we know that that zone is too large to operate efficiently currently, and so we wouldn't be able to expand it without creating some divisions or some splits in that zone to make it more efficient to operate and preserve the service quality for our customers without creating excessive wait times. So we need to do a little bit more work on these, but we will include them in the 5-year service plan as things that we're definitely planning to do. And that's all the information about the changes. I don't know, Megan, if you want to talk any more about submitting feedback, and then we'll take questions.
Yeah, I'll cover that real quick. Pretty simple, and I'm sure you've all been to the website already. It's rideuta.com/FYSP for 5-year service plan. We do have an interactive map with all this information on it, as well as opportunities for you to leave comments. We are accepting feedback through October 6th. And there's a couple of ways you can do that. If you do want to leave comments on the map, that's a great way for us to sort of see and pinpoint where your comments and your interests and priorities, where you'll be impacted, kind of gives us a sense of you and orients us to what you're concerned about for your communities. And then we also have an email address if you have more questions or want to submit your comments this way. We are reachable at community@rideuta.com. So please check those out, share them with your friends. And we will go to some questions here. Christabel is on the line too. So he and I are going to tag team this a little bit. We've got some questions to sift through. So I'm going to start in the Q&A. Christabel, if you want to head to the chat and we can work it that way. So one question we have is about the second draft and the Route 219. It calls for the Route 219 to start, which will go along 106th South without the divot to 114th South, that is in Route 218. The question is, could 219 routing be changed to have the divot and 218 routing be changed not to have it? And that maybe explaining a little bit about the process there would be helpful for insights.
Oops, I muted myself. So the current proposal is for Route 218 to continue doing what it's doing, which includes the divot down to 114th until 2028, at which point Route 218 would get replaced by the extension of Route 217 down to 104th. At that point, we proposed keeping the service to the River Park Corporate Center on Riverfront Parkway. The rest of the divot is we don't see as much ridership on, and so we propose that the buses take the heavy lifting at Riverfront Parkway and 104th, and that the on-demand serve the area here on 114th as well as the rest of Riverfront Parkway. We'd love to hear if that doesn't work, or if there's something else that would work better. Please either put that in the comments tonight, or you can leave a comment on the interactive map as well. That's the thought process is that divot will kind of get incorporated back into the on-demand service when the 15-minute bus service comes to 104th.
Perfect, thank you. Christabel, do you want to take one or read one out?
Yeah, of course. So, well, there was one that we answered already. We'll just repeat that one quickly. It was about the bikes by Gwen. So a part of our plans, we do work a lot with other stakeholders, other agencies in the area, including like, Wasatch Front Regional Council. But I responded to Gwen's question on there regarding a kind of a bike dock question regarding if they're like, can we get more dockable bikes? So that's not necessarily covered by our 5-year service plan, but we do talk about it in other parts of our long range transit plans and whatnot. So if you don't mind just checking out that link I put there in the chat, as well as maybe looking through some cool links on that same website that I put that can lead you to other like active transportation plans, like the one I said about Wasatch Front Regional Council. So I just want to, highlight that as well, and also to give Eric a little break as well. But so I just want to make sure that one, everyone saw that one. But the next one, it kind of goes a little bit with the innovative mobility zones that you answered earlier, Eric. So on here, it talks about kind of like the boundaries and how they're decided upon and how they're covering, one side as opposed to the other side. And just for like the audience, we are always trying to improve that and trying to figure out, where are some good areas. Most of the time it is intentional. Sometimes, we don't see things, and that's why you all are very valuable to what we do, because that's how we are able to be better on the ground. But the question is that Jacob put on here is are you all able to make the boundaries actually cover the whole areas, as opposed from one side to the other? And then, yeah, that's pretty much the question. Like, how is that decided upon, and are we able to cover, different kind of parts of the area?
So yeah, that's part of what we are looking at for the delivery of the on-demand zones or the innovative mobility zones, is where the zones are really large, like in South Salt Lake County. And if we were trying to split the zones up to make them more efficient and reduce the wait times, we might also introduce transfers for people if we force them to transfer from one zone to the other. So that's one of the things that we're looking at with our Innovative Mobility Solutions group is there a way to provide rides all the way across the area, and then more localized rides for people if you're just traveling, say, within the city of Riverton. That way, you wouldn't have to wait as long for a short trip, but the long trip is still available to you. And that could be part of our partnership with the TNC. We might offer you like an Uber or a Lyft discount if you're making a longer trip, and the UTA On Demand would serve just a shorter trip. Or we might have zones layered on top of each other, which would be complex in the back end. But you as the rider would just look at, oh, I want to make this trip from here to here. And if it's a longer trip, it might be a different group of drivers that makes it versus a shorter trip. We're still looking at what the most efficient way to meet both of those needs is, recognizing that some people do need to travel all the way across the zone, and some people only need to travel a short distance, like to the grocery store, to the doctor's office. That's hasn't been completely decided yet, but we are working closely with our partners in Innovative Mobility Solutions to make sure that we try to deliver the best service for each of those possible cases.
So just to follow up on that, there's one more question in the Q&A that's relevant to IMZs. It says, is it anticipated that some type of on-demand service will cover the Lehigh stop served exclusively by the discontinued Route 864 in April 2026?
Yes. So we do plan on covering that area that was previously covered by Route 864 prior to COVID. With on-demand, that will eventually also replace some of the service on Route 871. That's another area where we might potentially have a small on-demand zone layered right around the station, and then a larger zone that covers more of the whole region in northern Utah County. If we try to do all of that with just one area, then we'll probably see longer wait times, similar to what we sometimes see in the South Salt Lake County zone. And if somebody's just trying to go a short distance, it might make sense to have a zone just for that. And then if somebody's trying to go a long distance, have a different zone so that they're not competing with each other. But yes, we do intend to cover that whole area with the on-demand service once we make some of those modifications to Route 850.
Awesome. Okay, I'll do a couple of just simple, maybe less complex, just for a break too, Eric. We've got just a clarification about the trolley buses and the size of those. Are those full-size buses, or kind of just give a sense of what's the replacement gonna look like?
The trolley buses are slightly smaller than our regular buses, and they have fewer seats. So in a couple of these areas where we're looking, Lagoon, we often see very high passenger loads on that trolley. And then also on the 628 or the Midtown trolley, especially with including Weber State University on that route, Weber State University Davis and New Ames on that route, we would expect to not be able to fit all the people that need to ride on the trolley. So we would use a full-size 40-foot bus. It would just, at that point, it would just become a regular bus, just like any other bus route in the system.
Excellent. There's a question about whether we have any plans for service or infrastructure changes related to rail within the 5-year service plan.
So we just have a couple in the 5-year service plan. We do have South Jordan Downtown Station on the red line that's opening in 2025 and the S line extension in 2026. There are several other rail projects that are definitely in the pipeline, but not at this point in the 5-year service plan. That includes Front Runner 2X, which is double tracking Front Runner. That includes the extension to Payson on Front Runner. That includes the TechLink study, which is extending the new line on tracks that would go from the airport to Research Park. Front Runner 2X also will allow us to increase the frequency on Front Runner from 30 minutes to 15 minutes, and it would allow us to run a Sunday service on Front Runner that we don't currently run today. All of those, now that the Olympics are coming to Salt Lake in 2034, we're hoping to be able to expedite those projects and get them done at least in the next 10 years, even if not in the next 5 years. This is our best understanding of where we're at right now. We will be doing another 5-year service plan in 2026 for 2027. And so if we know in the next 2 years that those projects have been expedited, they'll show up in the next 5-year service plan. But we absolutely have a number of rail projects coming down the pipeline. They just haven't made it into this 5-year timeline as of today.
There's a question about Route 45. Gwen is asking if it's going to be extended west across the highway to places like Sorensen Research Park.
So I didn't cover this in a lot of detail, and it might be small on the map. But when MVX opens, we will be making some modifications to Route 47. And Route 45 and 47 are joined together. They'll start serving out of Murray North Station instead of Murray Central when MVX opens, but Route 45 will continue west as Route 47. The number will change, but you can stay on the bus and keep going west. And that will serve instead, currently Route 47 does come down on Atherton Drive here, and it gets off the main road for just a minute. MVX actually will be making a stop on Atherton Drive, so we will not have Route 47 go down there. We'll come straight down 4700 South, which will not be right in front of Sorensen Research Park, but it will be much closer because you can access it from the main arterial there. It's not really 45th or 47th right there, but that would be a couple blocks closer than Route 47 currently comes to that location. But you will be able to travel all the way across from Wasatch Boulevard all the way to 5600 West without getting off the bus.
Looks like we're getting most of the questions from the chat. We've still got a few in the Q&A. One question that's been posed in the chat is whether we have considered a route similar to the 417 that would travel Redwood Road from Bluffdale area to Saratoga Springs. Maybe, Eric, can you talk a little bit about that area?
Yeah, so that is something that we have talked about. Let me pull up this other map here. Yeah, maybe a little preview. We know that Route 126 and 219 don't hit everywhere that we want to hit in this region at this point. We do anticipate that bus service will expand in this area. We propose these two routes right now, but at some point we do plan on splitting the 126 in two and have this Route 126 go straight into, let me just go to the 126 slide. That'll be easier than trying to describe it verbally. Sorry if I'm giving anybody whiplash by going through the presentation really fast. So this portion of 126 right here will probably break off, and we'll have a 126 come into Daybreak this way, and then we'd have a new route 146 that would cut across and come through Bluffdale into the point station. And when that happens, we don't need Route 219 to go to the point, so we could extend Route 219 further south into Saratoga Springs and Lehigh, excuse me, and tie into either the Lehigh Frontrunner Station or the American Fork Frontrunner Station, depending on just what the market conditions are, the travel patterns are at that point. So it is something that we definitely want to do. It's not in the scope of this 5-year service plan currently, but depending if things change, if there's new development, I mean, obviously there's new development, but I guess if travel patterns change, or if there's a change in the next 2 years, that would be something that we might include in a future 5-year service plan, is extending service further down Redwood Road into Utah County. We'll have to see how Route 860 does as well in Eagle Mountain and Saratoga Springs, because that is a big change to that area already. And that may give us some insight into what would be the best way to implement additional service on Redwood Road to connect into that service.
I guess there's like a follow-up for that, Eric. It says in the chat, would having a 219, 146, and 817 all going to the point, and I think that'll be the point of the mountain, be realistic?
Well, we are planning on having quite a bit of development. I mean, just as a region, we're planning on having quite a bit of development in that area, and also having a new Frontrunner station and a new bus facility there. If for transfers between bus and Frontrunner, so it is a logical sort of connection point, even though it doesn't exist today. When it does go in, it makes sense to have multiple connections there. Route 126 will still tie into the existing Draper station, so there'll be multiple connections through there from South Jordan, Draper, and the point stations. But it seems like if Route 871 is going to go down Porter Rockwell, it makes sense for there to be a tie-in point there. And it would be a good tie-in point either for the 219 or at some point in the future, the 146, when the 219 goes further south.
So I see a lot of chatter, Jacob. We are recording your comments here. So we do, I think Eric was referencing the 871 on this slide. So just for clarification, but we will record kind of some of your thoughts here too. So one other thing, I wanted to address, there's a few other questions. So first, though, there's a question about how we named, or how the name for the South Jordan downtown station came about. I just wanted to provide a little bit of insights. We do work closely with the cities to name stations, but UTA does have policy around naming. We need it to be, explanatory geographically to where it's located. And so we do, maybe that's not a great answer, but we do follow our policy and work with the city, and it is the city of South Jordan.
We don't name it after a specific business or entity. There were in the past a few stations that were named that way, but that's not our current policy.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna skip to, I know Jacob, you have a lot of questions. I'm gonna jump back to them, but I'll go down to Chad. There's a question, Eric, just about in our confidence level around our ability to hire, retain the operators that are needed for this plan. Would you speak a little bit to staffing?
Yeah. So it is a lot. We recognize that. Right now, our staffing situation has improved a lot since the last time we did a 5-year plan. And we are currently on track to increase the number of operators that we have at each of our bus operating service units. We do plan to, as I mentioned at the beginning, when we have April change day be the main change day to add service. That's because we'll have hired people for ski for December. And so then instead of trying to find other things for them to do after ski service ends, we'll just put them straight into the new service. Hopefully that reduces the level of the lift that we need in order to provide the new service in April somewhat. This is a priority for the organization. I will say, you know, we have a lot of support from our leadership to increase the level of service on these routes. We have a lot of feedback from our community that we need to add more service. So that's something that we have to focus on. I mean, at this moment, we don't know exactly how many people we'll be able to hire, so we may need to make revisions. But we have talked to our talent acquisition team. They're aware that it is a pretty high benchmark to meet. We'll continue to go forward with this on the assumption that we will be able to meet those needs. Currently, where we sit, we have been having a lot more success hiring, but if that turns around again in the next couple of years, then we'll have to revise the plan again.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for everyone's questions. We've got a question on ski and snowboard racks. So we can note this, Gwen, as a comment from the public just about your experience using the ski buses. That will be logged. So I can't answer that at this moment, but we will definitely relay that to our colleagues who do have some stake in we all have stake in the customer experience, but have a little bit more planning expertise around how we plan for those amenities. So we have a question around the 248, Eric, Route 248 down Daybreak Parkway. Well, asking what happened to extension down to Daybreak Parkway.
So a couple of things. When we looked at the feedback that we got, it was more prioritized towards 126. And so we kind of put our eggs in that basket. And we also, when we were doing operational testing, right through the middle of Daybreak, that street is just barely wide enough for 2 buses to pass. So we need to do a little bit more work with the community, or we need to find an alternate route through there. We still think that connection is valuable, but we're holding off on that until we have a little bit more concrete idea that will actually work through that neighborhood.
A question about whether we have plans for replacing service that was previously covered by routes 307, 313, 320, and 354.
So couple things that are going on there. We don't plan to replace those routes one for one, but we do have a couple of things that are going in. I'm going to rapidly scroll through the presentation again. We're planning to, the work that UDOT is doing with the Cottonwood Canyons, there is a plan to have a large park and ride facility somewhere near the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon. And our extension of Route 4 down to the 6200 South Park and Ride is in anticipation of that. Once that park and ride opens, Route 4 will serve that park and ride, and it will connect to downtown and the U of U. There's a really strong potential travel market there in both directions. We'll have people coming from downtown taking Route 4 to the mouth of the canyon to ski. And then we also have community members from Cottonwood Heights, Holiday area that can use that park and ride to get into town. Rather than having a dedicated route, we would propose to have Route 4 come every 15 minutes instead of every 30 and provide that connection in both directions. The other thing is that the on-demand service, when it extends further north, would come up here to I-215 and would serve the same general area, and people could tie in using the on-demand into the park and ride or into tracks or into another facility to get to the rest of our system. There's a couple of reasons why we think that's a better idea. One is because, as we mentioned at the beginning, the routes that only ran a few times a day, they do create split shifts for our workers, and employee retention and working conditions is a big topic at UTA. What can we do to make those better? So we prefer to run all day bus service and have on-demand park and rides connect into it versus running just a few trips a day. The other thing is that we have noticed that our travel patterns have changed a lot in our region, at least on transit since COVID. where we used to see really strong peaks in the morning and in the afternoon. We don't see that nearly as much, partly I think because people are working remotely. Either they spend the whole day at home or they might start remotely and come in the middle of the day. So routes that used to have a ridership curve that had two big peaks sometimes only have an afternoon peak, or they're just a lot more flat across the day. And so it's not the market attraction that it was prior to COVID. And we feel like those resources are better used providing alternatives that are available to people all day instead of just to a certain group of people at peak. So we are planning on transit improvements in the area, but not restoring the 307, 313, 320, and 354 directly.
Sweet. Thanks very much, Eric. We have one last question that we'll answer, which was the one that before Jacob put that one, the 621. It's going to be, are the 612 and 630 stops at Pleasant View Station related to the proposal to extend Front Runner up to Brigham City?
Yes. The extension to Brigham City is still very much a work in progress at this point. We're buying the land for the corridor for the rail. It's probably going to be a while. You know, it's not in the scope of this 5-year plan. It might be 10 years or more until that service is available from Ogden through Pleasant View up to Brigham City. So this is an opportunity for us to at least provide a connection, a park and ride, and some bus connections to North Weber County, because we know that it will be a little while before Front Runner serves that region. I know it's 7 o'clock, but like
It is 7. I think we should probably wrap it up. If you have more questions, let's direct you back to our website for commenting on the interactive map, or that email address at community@rideuta.com. We'd love to hear from you. We really appreciate the engaged discussion about the 5-year service plan, your enthusiasm for transit service. We're excited about that, and we appreciate the feedback. We know your customer experience and your experience riding our service is really invaluable to hear about. So thank you for sharing your thoughts and ideas with us. Here's that information again. We are accepting feedback through October 6th, and we'd love to hear from you. So thanks everybody for joining tonight. Have a great evening.
Thank you.